Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of Border Reivers. This is a game about the Anglo-Scottish border raids from 1513 to 1603. The game design is by Ed Beach, who some may know from his previous games, one of which was Here I Stand. This is a game just hot off the presses. This came in a 4-pack for games. I'd ordered 4 GMT games. This was the last one I actually dived into. And so, mostly because I knew very little about it. So without further ado, let's take a look inside the box. Okay, let's take a look at what comes in Border Reivers. You get a lot. You get this big map. Big map. I set up for a 4-player game, and so I'm going to go ahead and move that to show you the full map in all of its glory. But you have 6 marches. These marches are independent regions within the borders that you are going to be contending over. And so you have let's just open it up so you can see just how vast this place is. You've got 3 marches on the Scottish side and 3 marches on the English side. In the 6-player game, at its fullest extent, everyone will be taking one of these marches, denoted by the dark brown, and the slightly less dark brown side. For example, this is the Scottish East March. Even though the western part is sort of a faded brown, the dark brown indicates the split between the English on the south and the Scottish in the north. But this is its own march. Now notice in that march that there are white lines. There are lines, and those lines break up each march into 4 sections, always 4. Never 5 and never 3, unless going by 3 you get to 4. But each of these regions is where you're going to have sheep, because sheep are very valuable in this game. Sheep are the thing, well, one of the main things, to obtain victory points, which is also a winning condition. That it's not for the sheepish. Well, actually, yes, it is. And in each of these regions, you're going to find places where you can have sheep. You can find an area for battle. For battles will come up and they'll get placed here in that region. Different players will have an opportunity to try and earn glory and accolades in that victory. There are also places where you can put defenses. So each of these lines here, you'll see like here, and you'll see here, and you'll see here. These are there are 4 on each side. So you've got your 4 in each of the regions. So you've got a castle. You always have a castle, and then you have 3 peels. That should be appealing to many of you. And these peels are locations that are meant to defend in case you're attacked on either side. These are all about people raiding your sheep, raiding your cattle. It can get pretty grating at times, and so you've got these going on, and you're gonna place those over time as part of your actions. And then you have defense tokens can be placed in certain regions as well, and those are a little more dynamic. These are permanent fixtures, permanent defenses. Your defense tokens can be set up on a per turn basis, and then there's an opportunity even then to shift it somewhat. Also, in each of these marches, there is a feud box. This is sort of your home. This is where you're based out of. So anybody with a grudge against you are going to have tokens here to note just how angry they are. And jail, if you manage to snag some raiders or put them in jail, well, they're here, and then your enemies have an opportunity to do a jailbreak for victory. And that's what it is. You also have horses, which we're going to talk about there. I'm going to put these back just because of the space size. I thought Mr. President was a big board, but this is bigger. This actually takes up more space than Mr. President. Again, Mr. President being a solo game, I get it. This is up to 6 players, and so there's going to be a need for space all around. And that's what you have. The map itself is just gorgeous, just a nice distinctive art style. Somewhat Nevsky-ish, but not entirely like Nevsky. Anyway, on the board, you're going to have sheep, as you can see here in the active area for the 4-player game we're going to show you. You've got a sheep in each region. These can extend, and you can get more and more sheep in the region. Sheep are valuable. And again, we've already set up to, at the beginning of the game, the Scottish and the English both have grudges against each other vertically. You also have in each place horses. Horses are going to be necessary because these are the things you're going to take these into your raiding opportunities, or your jailbreaking opportunities, or your feuding opportunities, or your battle opportunities. Notoriety. Each of the 7 regions has a notoriety track, and whoever has the most notoriety is going to get a bonus for actions that they take there. Then you have cattle, and cattle is money. Cattle is basically the form of currency. And so you have your cattle, and your cattle you can, and then horses, which you use for battle, and then you have your sheep, and sheep are more of a permanent uh, uh, measurement of your profitability, or yeah, just your scope on profitability, as can be seen on these sheets. We'll go over these sheets now. Everyone gets a sheet, and these sheets are where you're going to place cards, and there's different kinds of cards that you can place in here. Some on turn 2 only, others on turn 1. There's 3 turns in the game. And then you have your, oh, hey, sheepy. And then you can see here that based on how many sheep you have in your possession, you're going to get more horses that you can get more hand size of cards you can hold to surprise people in battle, and you get more income of your cattle, because cattle, again, is currency. And that's kind of what you have. Each player has their cattle. They have defense tokens. They start with some basic ones that they can place. One's a fake one, and then one is another one where you can place. And again, you're doing this semi-preemptively. You kind of get an idea of what could happen or what attack could take place, but it's you don't know perfect information until you actually get into the winter phase. We also have some handy cheat sheets. These are nice. This gives you sort of the breakdown of all the things in the game. It's this looks daunting in scope, but in reality, it's actually pretty darn simple. Once you start flowing through the game, it's going to be pretty clear in a lot of ways. Summer, yep. Summer turns, autumn, winter, and then spring, and then victory points. And that's it. That's what we've got. So why don't we just get into an example of the first stages of play. Okay, for anyone who's ever played a game called Seven Wonders, this is going to seem so doggone natural to you. There's some similarities here. Everyone's going to get a deck of 7 cards to start with in their hand as we get into the summer phase. You've got everything set up again. You've got your own little tableau. You've got your own sheets here. I should note that you also have these cards that will give you targets of what you can actually attack. We'll go into those later. I'm not going to do a full playthrough because that would take a long time, and there's enough going on here that I don't think I could do it justice without a better camera system and such. So this is really just an overview of play. Do not assume it's a playthrough. Really looking forward to someone doing a full playthrough of this game. So everybody starts with 7 cards, and on your turn you choose one card, pass it around. 77 cards of, anyway. You choose one of the cards, and let's take a look at our options here. We've got cards that will give us sheep, and sheep is pretty cool. We've got cards that will help us with our defenses. There's a card permanent. I mean, it's great. First off, we might want to add a warden. You know, it varies, because you're going to take these cards, you're going to pass it around. You may see, especially in a 4-player game, you're going to see some of these cards again. It's a matter of whether what you're giving up now versus what you're taking. Now, you could definitely move some sheep, add some sheep, or add some cattle. You'll notice that you can beef up in that regards, but again, you're going to be careful, because once you get past this summer phase of choosing cards and all the delightful things that go along with it, you're going to actually go into battle, and so you're going to be wanting to think of ways to defend yourself or offend others mightily. So we've got, church, and this is one where you can actually protect sheep. Yeah, in a town or a family castle, but that's a little early. It's a little early in the game for that. So we're gonna do this. We're going to pay 1 cattle. Oh, hey, we start with 8, not 7. So, all right, or 8, not 9. All right, and then we're going to take a warden. We've paid the cost, and now we're going to add this warden to our tableau, and he becomes a permanent fixture for the rest of the game unless we choose to replace him. So what does this warden do? Well, this warden, you get a token that you can use, and we'll grab that in a second. And this basically kind of gives you an example where wherever somebody attacks, if this token is present, then you're going to get extra dice to roll in defense, and you're going to get extra die roll modifiers, and extra die if positioned in the English East Marsh. Well, we're not, so we're not going to get extra die for that, because that's out of play. So we go here, we find Henry Percy. There we go. And we're going to place him here in our situation there. Yeah, so now we have defense tokens. Yay! And so then what we're going to do is we would pass this to the left on turn 1, to the right on turn 2, and then a variable choice on turn 3 based on our die roll. And then blue, and then up here, blue is going to look and go, what am I going to do? Well, here's a Reiver, and a Reiver is a nice permanent thing, gives you an attack dice too, so we would add that Reiver. I mean, the other cards would give us other stuff, but then we pass it over here, and then blue would be saying, okay, well, what do I want? Well, maybe I want an office card, but maybe I don't. Maybe I want an ally. You know, what am I looking at here? Well, we don't necessarily get an idea of it. So say, for example, like, oh, I want to, and again, I'm not playing optimally. You'd place this, and then you'd pass it around, and then we would get to here, and we'd be like, oh, what do I want to do? Well, maybe I just want some sheep. Oh, I can't. Ooh, that's a nice one. Adding attack die, Earl of Angus. I add to attack die. Yeah, so must be English to play some of these cards. And this is the thing, you can also choose to, none of these are cards, some of the cards you can hold, like, hey, you know, surprise attack, and you can keep them around for a future opportunity. Other ones you can also go, you know what, I don't want this card to go into someone else's hands, I don't have a better move, I'm going to discard it. And when I discard it, I can take a specific action. You would probably not likely want to do this. If you can find a better move, do a better move. But then you can add notoriety, add 3 cattle, add a sheep, add a horse. Well, let's add a horse. Now we have more dice power when we're attacking stuff. And then again, you're going to pass it to the left. You're going to do this 6 times. The 7th card is always discarded here. If you play a card, and to actually play it and activate it, it's out of play. But if you discard it, that's here. There are certain cards or offices that allow, at the end of a turn, some players to go rifle through and play one of these for free, etc. And you'll notice by paying that, I would have to pay, you know, 4 cattle, so I'd pay my 4 cattle there. Same thing, I'd have to pay 2 cattle, so it does come with a cost, and you've got to measure the cost against what you're playing. And you're going to go around and you're going to place all your cards until you have 7 cards, until all of this is done. Once you've done the 7 cards, well, happiness and merriment abound. Okay, then once you're done with the summer, say we've done all this, we've gotten all of our cards, we've gotten everything in there, then we do just go into the autumn phase. Summer was fun, we got to frolic and play in the meadows with cards, but then we go into autumn phase, and that's where you get to do you get sheep. You based on your sheep capacity, you can measure it then, and just, you know, add some income, double check your hand size, make sure that your horses aren't sowing themselves wildly. And then you can pick events, and then and that's where you go, okay, well, one event is, ooh, we're going to have a battle at Kinmont. Kinmont Willie. Oh, yeah. And this one, oh, the ballad, not a battle. Ballad of Kinmont Willie. This gives you an extra boost in combat, in that if you decide to do jailbreaks this turn, they're worth double the victory points. And then we have a battle at Redswire. So there you go. So we're set to go. And then at that point, let's see, we'll just kind of set those aside there. Once you've got these events, then everybody places their defense tokens. And this is where you're going to go, what? Yeah, where are they going to go? What are you going to do? You're going to have to predict what you think is going to happen. For example, if I had a lot of sheep here and not very many defenses, I'm going to assume someone is going to want to try to mess with me, and so I might choose to put a defense token here, and secretly, and this is all secret, because again, you've got the little bluff token too, and you want to try and convince people to maybe not attack your sheep and maybe attack somewhere else, whatever. You're trying to make it, set your defenses up as best as you can. Early on, you're going to have to be doing some guesswork. Later on, as you're growing your defenses, it's going to be more clear what areas are more difficult than not. But even then, you know, defense tokens matter, etc. And then you get into the winter phase where you're going to do battles. And we're going to go into that separately because this is so early and I'm just literally showing the most basic setup. I'm going to go into another example of play where I've already played through the entire first part of the first turn and gotten us to the battle. And again, just explaining the game, there's a lot of tweaks and different, like, nuances to this game beyond just what I'm explaining, but at least you'll get an idea of how it rolls when it's time to start doing battle here in the Border Reiver region. Okay, so we're going to show you a little bit more advanced into the game. We've already done the setup, we've already showed you kind of the basic starting points, but now we've all done our 7 cards, and now we're about to embark on one of the winter phases, the second combat, in fact. We've all done first combat, but what about second combat? don't think there's any second combat pip. Anyway, the cards have been... everyone simultaneously selects a card, and that card is basically a direction or an area where you are going to perform some sort of attack. You don't have to narrow in exactly yet, but you do need to give sort of an idea. And so everybody is going to, in turn order and in round order, in the first turn, for both combats, these are just randomly selected. In subsequent turns, you're going to go by whoever has the most victory points gets to start and then backwards. In this case, we have orange, light blue, blue, and red. All of them have secretly selected one of these cards that's going to tell them what their potentials, what their capacity is for combat in this particular round of the turn. I always get those confused. So in this case, we begin, and once everyone has selected a card, then in order well, first we're going to do notoriety. This is a place where you're going to take in each of these locations, each of the 7 marches, you're going to have an opportunity to bump your notoriety. Why would you do that? Because notoriety is going to boost you for extra dice during combat. Like if you're notorious there, you're going to have the fear factor on your side, etc. There's also 2 events that come into play in a 4-player game, 3 in other player counts, that may steer you. Some of these could be battles, where you actually place a battle in a location, and then you can choose to perform and be part of a battle if you get to it in time on your side. And the battles are a great way to get victory points and, to basically, yeah, you're in battle, yeah, for the alliance and stuff. In this case, we have extra points granted for feuds and jailbreaks, and that's kind of interesting. That would steer someone to go, okay, well, if I can get double points, then I might, that's a great opportunity. This is the round to do it. Plus, they can be targeted twice. Normally, of course, you can only target one location for the entire turn. So, for both combats, if someone attacks, and you've seen here, since we've already done 1 round, we've already had 4 rounds of attacks. These are not available normally here. Like orange is attacked here, light blue's attacked here, dark blue's attacked here, and red's attacked here. Normally those are off limits, but of course this breaks those rules. That said, let's get going. So we'd go through each backwards to forwards in notoriety and go, is there anything that can help us with our notoriety? Well, in winter, and I'm doing this, I should preface, notoriety only happens in the first combat of the winter phase. And so I'm only showing this to you. The second round of combat, the notoriety does not occur. All right, so then we would update notoriety, update these charts, because whoever's got the most is going to get an extra 2 die. It's to die for. And then, when that's done, then the attacker is going to go, okay, now I'm going to actually decide what I'm going to do. And to do that, so for example, orange, if you look at, he has got plenty of opportunity, +1 to his die rolls, and he can target any march for raid. This is a powerful card. This is when you're going to be wanting to seriously go, like, where is the best place to raid? I want sheep. And so over here, obviously not his, you can raid here, but there's some defenses here. But there's not very many defenses, but that's already been done. And so we can't mess with that. So we'll just do raid. We'll raid here. Let's do this. All right. Yes, because there's no. If you'll notice, there's no castle here, so that's not the castle placed here would benefit defensively the other side. And we're just going to go over 1. We're not going to go over all 4 sides because this is not a playthrough. I really, really hope and would highly encourage GMT or Ed Beach to do a playthrough to really give people a chance to see this in all its logical, cognitive, coherent glory. All right, so then the attacker you have to take horses. So you take some horses because you're basically saying I bid 2 horses. Oh, hey, let's attack. There. They're going to aim at those sheepies. Was that down there? Anyway, it was down. Notice some sheep, if they're turned on their side, they're basically defended by a pretend big structure-y thing. And so you can only go after the sheep that are standing, not the ones that are lying still. All right, and then we do that, and then the defender has a chance to do things like reveal. And so you'll see here that the deputy warden is going to give a defensive dice against that attack. And then finally, the offensive, the attacker, has a chance to play any held cards. Some of these held cards are pretty potent. They're ones that can affect you, and I don't have any right now, but there are some. Let's see if we have any yet. I don't think so. I don't think we will. Of course not. We haven't. So, but the attack cards can be used to help push some combat your way. So combat bonuses your way that are kind of surprises on the defense. And there you go. Everyone's going to do this in round order until all 4 players have done that. After which they're going to compute the combat dice and then resolve it. And that's. So here's where it gets interesting. The combat is not just some simple roll dice, whatever. You've got these nice boxes that kind of tell you, okay, the Reiver, if it's a raid, is going to get 2 dice. So we're going to put 2 here. We've committed 2 horses, so we're going to put 2 here. Our allied grain says bonus attack die in the Scottish Middle March, and so I get a bonus attack die from there. Notoriety, we look at the chart, I don't have any orange there, so I do not have a chance to have my notoriety have impact. Otherwise, that'd be an extra set of die. And then sheep, for every possible sheep, you get a die because, well, the sheep are, you're trying to, like, you know, they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable. Held cards, offices. Here, there isn't this. My particular office here helps me buy cards. It doesn't help me with defenses. And so that's it. So we've got 2, 4, 5, 6, I believe. Don't shoot the messenger. No, hopefully I got it right. And then here, and then in the defensive side, you look and go, okay, are there any peels in the area? Nothing sounds appealing. If there were, and that's these peels that you place around, there's places that you can place them, and they're gonna affect the 2 areas next to them. There's no peels here, and there's no castle here, so there's no defense in that regard. However, there is the defense token. And so we're going to place that there, and that's going to give a die for against us. And then if we were in battle, we would have the defensive dice for battle, but this isn't a battle. Battles are particular specific event cards that come up. And so we're ready to roll, and we're going to roll. So 2, 4, 5, 6 dice here. All right, 6 dice here. Against one defense dice. 3. Okay, so now we have to evaluate it. We have a handy chart to help us evaluate the raid. So for we know that we get +1, and so all of these we're just going to flip them. So 5 becomes 6, 6, 2. Well, I mean, yeah, 2 doesn't matter. Anything that's a 1, even if it gets to be 2, doesn't count. So we're just going to remove those from the equation. And then 3 becomes a 4, which I don't think matters much. So, okay, so we have, look at that, we have ourselves some dice to handle. So, on the, in the case of this, we have 1, 2, 3, we have 1 cattle and 1 VP, and then we have 2 sheep and 2 VP, other than the basalt sheep. So basically 1 cattle. So we're going to get 1 cattle from this attack here. So, you know, they lose 1, we gain 1. So 2, 3, 4, and we get 1. Huzzah! And we get a victory point. So we're going to give ourselves a victory point here. Then we also get the sheep. We only get 1 because there's only 1 we can snag. What am I doing? Oh, here, Sorry, here. 1 we can snag. So we get a sheep. We can place it in our own arena. I'm not saying I'm doing. And then 2 victory points. So there we go. And that's nice. And look at that. See all the happiness that happens? All right. So lose a sheep, cattle, and sheep. Yep, I gain. I still score the full VP even if I don't, so I get an extra 2. So even if I could have stolen more sheep, but I didn't, but I still get the extra victory point according to this. And add defender's cube to the attacker's cube. So guess what? They're angry that they've just been stolen from, and so we're going to put into the feud box down here. And look at that. Now they're really mad. So blue is probably going to be like, I'm really mad and I'm going to go for a feud. And the more fuel here, the more cubes here, the more extra dice you can roll. And so the more you antagonize one of the other sides, the more difficult it's going to be for them. So I flip that over to show we did that. Leave that there. These can go back on their sides. They're done for this particular turn of combat. And that's an example of play. Now, what could have happened if this had been differently rolled? If it had been, then if you'll notice, the defense has opportunities too, where they can do some damage backwards. And so, like in this case, had I rolled on a raid, had I rolled a 5 or a 6, and say I rolled a 5, I would block some of those hits, and that would have been able to stop me, perhaps stop any further damage or stealing going on. At 6, then you have a capture ability, and that's add jailbreak, yeah, and that's you get to steal a horse, add a cube. Basically, it didn't go well, and you captured some of those mean people taking your sheep. And then there is possible to have overload rolls. You can, for example, you can take your warden card and use it to move a warden over and give a +1 in a defense of a location. You also have the warden that you have as a defense token that can boost that too. So you can wind up getting 7 or more, and if you do, then you get serious victory points. So it could backfire. Raids could backfire. We'll just put it that way. And that's it for kind of the flow of the combat portion that everyone's going to go through and do. And when they're done, there's other nuances too. I mean, if you're in a battle resolution, if nobody actually, if two sides don't fight, etc., it all goes. And then the spring is sort of housekeeping, where you remove stuff, set up, earn some points here and there and stuff. It's the big meat of it is the summer, and then the autumn is kind of interstitial, and the winter is kind of the let's go, folks. Let's duke it out, and then ding ding ding, do spring. And then so on. And again, you'll earn notoriety too. One of the things that that you can do by some of the other types of things, like feuding is great because it increases your notoriety and gives you victory points. Jailbreaking takes a horse, and it also messes with notoriety. And battle is seriously victory point city. So a lot of details that go on. But that's an example of sort of a later idea of what's going to go on. Once this is done, once all the other 3 players have done their turn, of course they'll go into the spring phase, and then they'll do it 2 times, 3 times. There's a different deck of cards for each of the 3 turns. They get more and more potent as people get more and more ingrained into their defensive positions and their offensive plans. But yeah, that's Border Reivers. Let's get to my final thoughts. Okay, final thoughts on Border Reivers. What did I think? And why did I think what I thought to think what I thought? First off, we always go over the cons, then we go over the pros, then we go over my final thoughts. Preface to the original, like what you saw, what I showed you was a sampling of gameplay. As always, I don't do the full playthroughs. There is currently, at the time of this video, 1 solo playthrough. Hopefully there'll be more. But definitely, I'm looking forward to seeing some other playthroughs even after I'm playing this game. But anyway, let's get on to my thoughts. The cons. The component quality in this game is very high in a lot of different places, but not every place. The map itself is gorgeous. No problems with that. I love the little sheep and the horses and stuff. And then, other sections of it, like the cards are okay. They're decent. They do the job. The card plays you play. And then there's the player placards are somewhat kind of, it's strange. It's like a strange, almost utilitarian sort of art approach to laying those out. I'm like, okay. And it's not like it's bad. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of a different departure. Sometimes when you see something beautiful, something just fine next to it is not beautiful enough, and it shows a contrast. And that's what I think happened here. The other thing is the map. The lines aren't really clearly pronounced between the marches because the irregular patterns of the 6 marches that you have available. And so I did find that I was playing this with others, that there were times and they were constantly trying to remember which of the borders, or just kind of quickly remember the board, like, okay, this is my, okay, that section of the march is yours, this is mine, the lines between the marches, and then the intersections of the 4 farm sections in between, and then of course the slightly more bold line between England and Scotland. Not a big deal, and I actually, in some ways I appreciate it because it's not making these lines stand out so that the map underneath is not shown in all its glory. But then it's, again, it is a readability thing, and I solved the problem personally by putting Sour Patch Kids along the main borders, because if you're going to bling out your game, Sour Patch Kids, for the win. And then the other thing, great component. A lot of stuff had great components, and then I kind of wish there was a way, but I understand that there are constraints where you have the sheep, and then the sheep on the side means they're protected. I'm like, that's kind of, compared to all of the other cool things like the castles you put in the middle, and stuff like that. I plan to somehow bling those out so that the sheep can have some sort of like more. It makes a big deal that sheep on the side are protected by this structure, but there's no real structure. But whatever, small, minuscule issue. The other thing is that I would not play this game 2 to 3 players. I would play it 1 player. I would play it 4 player, maybe 5 player. And then 6 player, absolutely. I would absolutely play this 1 and 6. 2 and 3, I didn't like how you had to take on. It just became too much overhead for the game, because the game works hard to try and reduce overhead and elongation of time constraints. So just something to be mindful of. Not something I would play personally. The other thing is, Mr. President, the game that came out, has been known like, this is a table hog. How big a table am I going to need? And I think part of that's because people don't imagine a 1-player game having that much table space. This is even bigger. Like, if you put everything out for a 6-player game, this takes up more space than Mr. President. Mr. President has a very large board, but a lot of the action is on that board, and there isn't a whole lot that goes off board. Here you have a nice big Herkin board, and then you have to have 6 tableau areas around it to be able to place your cards, to your components, and everything around it. And so this is a room hog. Even less so at 1 player. And again, you saw what I did when I was playing 4 player. There's ways you can kind of like cover up, the marches that are inactive for a 4-player game and stuff. You can work around it, but just be mindful. It is, and that's it. Personally, I now understand what a march is. Every time I think march, I think like coin games or something where you march, you move, but march being an actual physical thing. That shows how ignorant I was of the topic. Now I know what they are, so that's it. And finally, I do think, and this is a temporal thing, hopefully, this is not a ding against the game, but this seems like the quiet child that sits in the corner of a very large party of touted GMT games. There are almost no videos about this at all. No playthroughs, no reviews, very little information coming out of it, which surprised me. And really, it's why I think I went to the game last, because I sort of ordered it based on the idea of I thought it was interesting. I saw some snippets of the map. There were some links to diary pages, which at the time I started looking back at this after I got it were broken. I think they're fixed now. But there's just little to no fanfare about this game. And so I'm kind of disappointed in that, and I hope that gets resolved, because now we're going to get into the pros and find out why. As for pros, the components are great. Yes, I know I've dinged a few pieces of it, but I love the map. It's gorgeous. It's stylistic. I want to live in it. I don't want to be raided by my neighbors, but I want to live in this map. It's beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. It feels like Nevsky a little bit, but not entirely. It's just, oh my gosh, it's just great. The rulebook, as always, GMT's style tends to be fairly consistent, so if you like their consistent style, you won't likely find it derailing too much, other than a few games in indoors. But otherwise, you have a very clear, very orderly, very legible multiplayer game, and then they do what I like best, which is to completely give you a separate, clear, ordered, and independent rule set for solo, rule manual, and then of course they give you this whole extra guide of information and historical notes, which is a must-read to really set the stage and get your mind into the context of the Border Reivers, what they meant, sort of the murkiness of the situation, who really was the law of the land at any given moment, at any given time, between big forces, how they turn the head, etc. and stuff. And so points to them for that. Simultaneous, the fact that this game tries to be simultaneous wherever it's possible really makes it shine, because it makes it a more concise experience for 1 to 6 players, but not a watered down experience for 1 to 6 players, because it's a quick game, but it's not too quick of a game. And that's really exciting to me, and something that I didn't recognize was going on, especially until I read the designer notes to really understand the motivation and the inspirations that this designer took decades ago to sort of start realizing what eventually would become Border Reivers. Every moment of this game, when you're playing it, is joyously intense and exciting. It has interesting choices that lead to interesting results, that funnel into interesting situations that merit interesting results. What more can I say? Well, a lot more. Every card is a delicious little slice of pie when you're selecting them. You want the best flavor of pie for you and the least good flavor of pie for those around you. You get that mini decision, like, I want this card, but if I give him that card, seeing what I'm seeing now that's going to help him, I can ditch that card. Or what do I do? What juicy decisions am I going to make? You have cards that build you up or enrich you in ways that you might need, and you might hope that they come around again, but you're not guaranteed that they're going to come around again. You've got cards that give you surprises to unleash when it's battle time, like, I think I've got it in good stead, I'm good to go. Ooh, here's a held card. Darn you, go to held. There's cards that protect you from surprises too, and that's nice, like, kinda, but in general, it's more about surprising and stuff. And then you have your actions that you take, and those actions, like, hey, I'm going to lead you to conflict. I love the narrowing in, the triangulating of conflict. You start off and you've got, okay, and it's winter, here's the different card plays I have, and the ordering and the order matters. And then you have this conflict that starts off with, target cards saying, okay, this area I'm going to focus on. And then you make, after you jockey a little bit, then you go and you progress to, that's what I want to go after. And then you contend with it. And I love that the conflict is very fleshed out. This is, despite some people disagree and say it ends up being a Chuck Fest. I don't think so, because all of the things that lead up to that Chuck Fest, that small, minuscule Chuck Fest situation, are very thematic. You've got your jailbreaks, your feuds, your raiding, your battling, and it's multi-layered. You're gathering several inputs. What did I decide to commit to for horses? What do I have around me that I set up for defenses? What about my warden? What about all these things that add up to, this is how many things that dice that I'm going to end up rolling, and then the occasional reroll possibilities. And then you determine your potential, then you cast that potential and see how well you did, and you also have the potential, if someone set up their defense situation to backfire in glorious ways, where, oh, you know what? I jailbreak, got lynched. Dang it, darn. Well, okay. But it all, almost all of it leads to glory one side or another. It's all about gaining glory via victory points. And there's a cacophony of microscopic ways to eke out that victorious whole of victory point accrual. So it doesn't just feel like it is just victory point accrual. The risk reward here is nice. Again, you're having to commit in stages, and so you don't see the whole picture, but you see plenty enough of the picture to make a rational, conscious, intelligent, informed decision. And I love the growth curve. To me, it's magnifique. You start off again, you're small. Think Seven Wonders, you're small. You're building up a little bit, building up defenses, getting larger, expanding your empire. Generating more to build more, to be more, to contend with other people who are also generating more and building more. It's absolutely fantastic. And thank you for the war. I mean, whenever, this is going to get compared, I think, to Seven Wonders, because it's clear that Seven Wonders had some inspiration with it, with the simultaneous drafting and stuff. And to me, when it came to Seven Wonders, I loved Seven Wonders. I think I rated it a 10 at the time. It's probably an 8, right now, just because it's fine, time and tide. But the one thing that Seven Wonders did that I didn't like is that, the war aspect of Seven Wonders were like, okay, now it's time for battle. I have more red than you. I get this token, you get the smaller token, or whatever. To me it was like a tepid, stupid abacus war. And then here it's replaced by honest-to-goodness, intelligent warfare and planning and execution. The whole build-up in all of these other stages is then to be able to maneuver the conflicts to your advantage while stifling the opportunities of your peers and enemies to do the same to you. It's exciting to build up your drafting and then to just be treated to this fireworks display of activities going on around the map in that phase. It rewards you, like Seven Wonders did with each of these little cards, these 6 out of 7 cards, and then 6 more out of 7, and 6 more out of 7, this kind of little inkling, little oomph here and there that just builds you up until you get to this nice crescendo, this, symbol crash, and then you do it 2 more times, and so, if you can't tell, I really wound up liking this. When Seven Numbers was name dropped about this, I went from, I'll probably back this just because it looks cool, to what? I never, if you'd have said that GMT was going to have a designer create a Seven Wonders-like game experience that had meat and bones and real historical value to it, I would have said, yeah, right after they do a sci-fi coin game and a zombie game. And here we are. This is what I dreamed a Seven Wonders-like experience could be. It is the maturation of the gameplay mechanisms in its predecessor or inspirational predecessor that works solidly into the timepiece that is the Border Reivers era. It feels right at home in this venue the way that it maps out. I kind of part of me pines for like a Western cowboy variant of this because I think some of the ideas translate quite well to rustling and territory and jailbreaking, Doomtown Reloaded GMT edition. So anyway, and it might be that my fascination with this game is that I had planned someday to create a similar system, in my mind, to someday just try to. I'm always fleshing out ideas. I'm an idea-er, not a designer yet. A better designer has frankly already done it for me. And again, 6 players, I can pull this off, teach this game, and have a good time. 1 player, I can pull this off, teach the 1 player, and have a good time, and feel like I had a meaty good time. So when the 4 games came out, the Barracks Emperors, Mr. President, People Power, and then Border Reivers came out all at once, I sort of put this off last because I really had high expectations for the others, and they didn't disappoint. The Barracks Emperors was what I expected, which is a nice surprise little hit. Mr. President was everything, the Grandmaster Grail game that we've all looked for. People Power being a coin game and having followed its trail, I knew what to expect, and so they all knocked it out of the park for me in their ways. This little guy hit for the cycle, and that really came out of left field. Sports analogies galore. This is the surprise of the year for me. I love this game because it really, probably again, because I love a Seven Wonders style game, and I love the way that this builds up. I love the way that you can play this 6 players, 4 players, 1 player, and really feel speedy meat. Just a great experience, a great time, lots of interaction, lots of play. The most optimal play time, but still feeling like you walked away going, this was a really fun experience, even single player. And again, appreciate the solo board. So if you're on the fence for whether you want this game or not, take the Blue Oyster Cult's advice and don't fear the Reaver. All right, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.